I pulled out my phone and Googled something, and it was probably, hormonal, stubborn, fat, menopausal woman, help me. And up popped the words intermittent fasting, which I had never heard before. I was familiar with long-term therapeutic fasting through human history.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that a person could deliberately, consciously have a pattern of fasting and eating each day, fasting and then having an eating window. I didn't know that that was a way to heal my body every day, burn excess fat. I was carrying around excess. It's there, it's stored on the body to be used as fuel, except mostly we don't ever tap into it. And I stayed up all night and I read and I learned, and I went down the stairs in the morning as the sun was coming up over the Rocky Mountains, and I said, thank you for your prayers. I think I found something.
Welcome to the Natural Health Matters podcast, where it's all about maximizing your health potential so that you can look and feel your best at any age. I'm your host, David Sandstrom, naturopathic doctor and biblical health coach. And this is episode number 119. Today we have in the show Laurie Lewis. She's a certified health coach, an author, and an expert in women's health over 50. Her specialty is using intermittent fasting to solve health challenges related to aging. Laurie, welcome to Natural Health Matters.
Hi, David. Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you again. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. This is such a great topic that I think a lot of the listeners, a lot of the Natural Nation is very interested in. We're all getting older. We can't stop, time from passing by, but we all want to age gracefully, don't we?
Yes, we do. And I think it seems kind of obvious to say it, but as the older we get, we tend to, in our society, feel worse and worse, which is a bit alarming. But many people have been dieting and struggling with their bodies their whole lives. And so it's a joy to be able to, you said over 50, because yes, that's when the aging really seems to kick in terms of who I serve and help. But I love catching people earlier as they're kind of waking up to, I don't think that I want to be struggling so much with my body.
My dad died at 87, but he used to say, if I knew I was going to live this long, Dave, I'd have taken better care of myself.
Yes, I love that. So that's a great springboard, what your dad said. I love it.
Yeah, it's true. But anyway, why don't you just give us a little bit of a background as to how you got to what you're doing today, and just give the listeners a little bit of a 35,000-foot view on what you're doing today.
Well, I had kind of an epiphany, if you will, when I was in my late 20s that I'm really grateful for. I had a thought one day, it was quite quiet, which was, I think this Diet Coke might not be good for me. This Diet Coke. And that had me kind of off and running in my thinking about what else am I putting in me that seems to be normal, in air quotes, normal, that might not be good for me. And I decided at that point that two things, that I was going to get very interested in nutrition and learning more about how we fuel our bodies. And two, I just decided that there was a whole category of food that I was going to think about as not food, kind of hyphenated, not food. And so for me, that I decided I don't like dessert. I was like, well, I did like dessert, but I don't know why seemed to be so wise at age 29. I was like, I'm just going to decide that I don't like it anymore, and then I'm not going to eat it anymore. So I stopped eating all ultra processed food. I mean, sometimes I'll have crackers, but ultra processed food, Diet Coke, all soda, even orange juice because it's so highly processed. I just decided that all this category of stuff was not food. And I stopped eating. I stopped being interested in it.
How old were you when you had that epiphany?
29.
29.
And so then, fast for all these years, I studied nutrition. I was really interested in it for myself. I never wanted to be the food police. I never wanted to disparage others for their choices. It felt very personal. And
Right.
so when I hit my early 40s, I felt like I was at the top of my game. People bemoaned turning 40, and I thought, gosh, I feel great. And then I started experiencing the symptoms of perimenopause. But David, they don't send us to biology class for older ladies, and I had no idea what was happening. And I just started suddenly feeling worse and worse. And when I went into menopause, which means a woman goes through perimenopause, which is the adjustment phase, which can be anywhere between 4 and 10 years. And then when you go into menopause or postmenopause, that's when you don't have your cycle for a year. And when that happened, I suddenly gained 50 pounds. Boom.
Wow.
I didn't change anything about my food. Remember, I was already fit and eating like a healthy person. And so I was as confused as anyone, but everyone in my life was like, wait, how could you suddenly gain 50 pounds? You're the healthiest person we know. And I really suffered for 4.5, almost 5 years. And the suffering, David, it was the excess weight, because that wasn't comfortable in a lot of ways. But it was brain fog and memory loss, and my balance was off, and I was aching head to toe. So I was really a hurtin' pup. And I went home to Colorado. I was living in New York for 25 years, and I went home to Colorado where I grew up. And my mom said, in all her thoughtfulness, but it didn't sound thoughtful to my daughter ears, she said, let's use this time that you're home to turn the weight around. Ouch! So I was standing in her kitchen wailing and having a temper tantrum like a 5-year-old, and she listened so thoughtfully and lovingly. And then she said, let's pray for an answer. And that is really what I needed. And I went upstairs to my room in her house, and I tucked into bed, and, I did as we all do, and we know we shouldn't. I pulled out my phone and Googled something, and it was probably, hormonal, stubborn, fat, menopausal woman, help me. And up popped the words intermittent fasting, which I had never heard before. I was familiar with long-term therapeutic fasting through human history.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that a person could deliberately, consciously have a pattern of fasting and eating each day, fasting and then having an eating window. I didn't know that that was a way to heal my body every day, burn excess fat. I was carrying around excess. It's there, it's stored on the body to be used as fuel, except mostly we don't ever tap into it. And I stayed up all night, and I read, and I learned, and I went down the stairs in the morning as the sun was coming up over the Rocky Mountains, and I said, thank you for your prayers. I think I found something. And she asked what it was, and I explained it, and she said it makes perfect sense. And she asked, how may I support you? Which I think
Wow.
are the most
That's
beautiful.
a great phrase.
How may I support
Wow.
you? And so I told her that I was going to aim for noon, that I was going to drink plain water and have a cup of black coffee in the morning. And that was over 6 years ago, and I've had an eating window every day. It changes, and this is what I love supporting and coaching people with. But what's so amazing is that I slowly and methodically, safely lost the weight over 15 months, 51 pounds in 15 months, but I felt better in 3 days. And so people think fasting or intermittent fasting or having an eating window or going without food for more hours than you might think are comfortable, that seems really hard. And yet, what I love sharing with people and showing people is that you will feel so much better very quickly, as I did. And now I've coached thousands of people, and it's such a joy to have people feel better.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. That's very inspirational. When I had my health coaching practice and I saw people in an office, a brick and mortar setting, and I would give them, recommendations, get them on a protocol, and counsel them on lifestyle changes. And occasionally you'd have somebody say, a lot of people thought it wouldn't say it, is that, Dave, these recommendations are going to be hard. This is going to be tough to implement. And my response is, yeah, it is. But you want to know what's harder? Going through life with compromised health. Far more difficult than anything we're going to do to rebuild or hopefully maintain our health.
Yes.
So, it's easier to keep up than it is to catch up. Right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah,
that is for
absolutely.
sure. And it's never too late. It's
absolutely.
Never too late.
Doesn't matter. If you woke up breathing this morning, there's hope, right? I wanted to circle back just a minute to what you talked about Diet Coke, and I found, believe it or not, even now, in the information age, that there are people that actually think that Diet Coke is a healthy choice.
Yeah, because
it's diet, and they're getting their health information from well-funded, clever marketing.
That's right.
I'm making a healthy choice. I'm drinking diet. Well, the sweetener in there is a chemical sweetener that the body doesn't know what to do with. So it stores it as fat if it can't eliminate it all, which would it prefer to do. But it's a toxin, and it's not designed. God never designed our bodies to deal with this onslaught of toxins that way. Just a real quick story. I used to fly for Delta Airlines, and a guy I was flying with said, we were talking about Diet Coke, and he said, my wife had debilitating joint pain. She was in a wheelchair. The doctors thought it was lupus. And I read an article about how aspartame can cause joint pain. And she used to be live on Diet Coke. He said, why don't you try cutting out the Diet Coke and see what happens? She did, and she completely recovered.
Well, good for her for being able to do it, because,
Yeah.
David, I have so many clients who their biggest suffering is the addiction to the soda. And
Yes.
I just really applaud this woman for being able to do it, because that is very hard. And then
Yeah.
the result, how beautiful.
Yeah, how beautiful, right? It's just so encouraging. I love hearing those kinds of stories. A simple fix. It wasn't even complicated.
It is, and it really shows a reverence for our bodies, our relationship with our bodies, this gift of this body that we got given to go through this life in or with. And I'm really inspired by the opportunity to support people in eradicating all those diet myths, that diet prison, that diet culture, the diet noise that we're in, and tune inward to this exquisite body and have a reverence for it, and really begin or continue to develop just a miraculous relationship with this body that we have.
I love that term reverence, because the Bible teaches that the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. When we walk into a church, we want to have a bit of a reverent attitude because we're going there to worship the creator of the universe. And he created us as well, and he lives inside of us. And, we ought to honor that and take care of our bodies in a special way. There's got to be somebody listening right now that says, oh, here we go, the fasting thing again. That's going to be so difficult to implement. Can you speak to that a little bit about how you would ease into a fasting lifestyle?
I would love to.
Because I'll bet that's on somebody's mind right now.
Yes. And, you said lifestyle, and it is. And yet that word, I think, for people feels a little cringy or scary, because mostly we don't know ourselves as able to continue anything for very long. And so when we envision ourselves doing something forever, it's like, oh, I don't trust myself to be able to do that. I quit everything. And so I would say to begin with the thought that this really is one eating window at a time, and you get to choose when it is. And then back it up even a little more and start to get inspired and motivated by why you might be doing this. Why would I wake up in the morning and drink plain water and have a cup of coffee, black coffee, and wait until later to eat? If you're thinking about that, that just sounds terrible. Well, why you would do that is that has integrity with how our bodies are designed. Imagine even 100 years ago, and then way back all of time, human beings didn't have constant access to food. Every time their stomach grumbled, they didn't have a fridge or a snack pantry.
That's
and
right.
so they had to use that stomach grumbling as an alert system to remember to go out and find food. Well, we don't have to go very far to find food. So it has integrity with the way our body is designed to wait and eat later. Why does that have integrity? Well, our body is now optimized after all of human history and evolution to thrive in a fasted state. We get stronger, brighter, sharper. We make new brain cells. We tap into our own body fat for fuel. We have this deep cellular repair system called autophagy. And so we're not depriving ourselves when we're fasting. We're actually in repair. So if you can kind of get your head around, I'm in repair, I'm eating all the delicious foods I love later, it's kind of the best of everything. The way you start is you start with today, you start with tonight, this afternoon or tonight. What time are you going to close your eating window? That's the first question. So, David, when you look at your day today and what time your last meal might be scheduled, when would be a good time for you today to close your eating window?
Well, personally, I like to finish eating around 5 p.m.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice and early.
Yeah, so I'll start eating around 11-ish and finish eating around 5-ish. That would be my choice. Now, that's a flexible schedule.
Yeah.
If we're going to go out to dinner with some friends and I'm eating at 7, 8 o'clock at night, I'll do that once in a while.
Sure.
But if I eat within 3 hours of going to bed, I don't sleep as well.
That's right.
When I was 21 years old, I'm 60 years old today. And by the way, everybody listening, Laurie is 60 years old as well. Not today, but she is 60. And she
60.
looks terrific. If you watch it on YouTube, you'll know what I mean. But, it's a flexible window because you don't want to stress yourself out and go out with some friends where everybody's enjoying a dinner together and say, nope, I can't do that. The stress that brings is probably worse than compromising the eating window.
That's right.
So when I was 21 years old, I used to be able to eat right before bed. I would love to eat. It makes me sleep better then. I'm not 21 years old anymore.
Okay, so you've got 5 p.m. Now, someone out there might be like, oh, no, I start my eating window at 5. Everybody's different. So for everybody out there, you want to look for yourself. What am I, what am I working today, and what's my commute, and how long will it take to make dinner, and when does everybody else want dinner, and when is a reasonable time to finish that last meal? Now, other people are like, well, I like breakfast and lunch. I don't even want dinner. Okay, great. So each person, whether it's 10 p.m. or noon or 3 p.m. or like David 5, you get to say today, you're not even thinking about the rest of your life. Today, what time are you closing your eating window? So let's say somebody out there is like 7:30. Okay, 7:30, great. After 7:30, you may have to change some habits. You may have to take a walk instead of sitting in front of, in your favorite chair and Netflix when you might have popcorn or a glass of wine, right? So you may have to shift your habits up a bit to make it easier on yourself. But you're going to close that eating window at the time you decide. You're going to drink plain water after that. Now, plain water, what is that? Plain, unflavored, no lemon, no food like sweetness or flavors. It can be hot. You can have a cup of plain hot water in a mug. It can be cold. It can have ice. It can be sparkly. It can be, tap water, plain unflavored water. Then you're going to go to bed, wake up tomorrow, and you're going to add 12 hours. Now, for David, that would be 5 a.m. For someone else, 7:30. It could be, you get to say you're going to add 12 hours. 12 hours with only plain water or plain black coffee has been proven to extend our lifespan. Now, is a 12-hour fast long enough to tap into your body fat and get that deep healing and increase your human growth hormone? Probably not yet, but
No,
it's
but
a
it's a
great place
great
to
place to
start.
start. If
That's
you've only
right.
gone maybe 6 hours, for the last decade or more, 12 hours is a great place to start.
It sure is. And so, everybody out there, you've decided when you're closing your eating window, you've had plain water, you sleep, you wake up in the morning, you have plain water. As I've said a few times, you can have a cup of black coffee. And then at the time you choose, now, what if that 12 hours rolls around and you're like, I'm not even hungry? Then wait, go a little longer. And then when you decide to open your eating window, eat normally. Well, what's normally? You get to say, what do you normally eat? That's when you can have, as I call your candy coffee, you can have a meal. Um, and then I really recommend the next step in the practice is eat a meal until you're satisfied, pause, wait for the next meal, pause, wait for the next meal. Most people in our society don't ever eat actual meals. Maybe they'll eat dinner, but mostly we just kind of eat stuff, eat in the car, eat in front of the computer, have a little snack here, have a little snack there.
Right.
And someone hands you a muffin, suddenly it's in your mouth. So just like bring a little bring a little awareness to when you're eating in that eating window. And then again, you close it. You, as we say, fast clean. You drink plain water. You go to bed. You wake up tomorrow. You add your 12 hours. Well, then maybe it's a little more. Maybe it's a little more. And I think that most people can gradually increase and get to a 16-hour fast within a week to 10 days. So you want to be increasing it. So then you've got a 16-hour fast and an 8-hour eating window. You just take the 24-hour day and divide it into the clean fasting hours and the eating window. And then I would kind of play around with an 8-hour eating window. Now, you said, David, that you like a 6-hour, generally around 11
Yeah.
a.m., generally around till 5. And then what
Right.
you do, everybody, is you settle in and you have that kind of become your routine for 3 to 4 weeks. And you see how you feel. And if you're invited to a thing, you adjust it. You either make it longer or you move it earlier or move it a little later. Don't sweat it. You didn't ruin anything. You want to start noticing how the diet culture would have us think that we did one little thing a little different and we wrecked everything and I throw in the towel and I quit. And people will say about intermittent fasting, they're like, oh my gosh, I've never done anything for 2 weeks. I've never done anything for a month. I've never done anything for 6 months. And it's because we're really tuning in, especially in that first and second month, to discover what's going to make us feel really well. This is a game of feeling well, not like in diet culture. We'd like, I'm trying to be good. This isn't about being good. This is
Right.
about feeling good.
Very good. Yeah. There's so much to say there. The diet culture, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, but we've been hearing for so many years, oh, you're overweight. It's because you're undisciplined. You need to eat less and exercise more. And we now know, I mean, if you have, any observational skills whatsoever, that pretty much doesn't work for almost everyone. It's a fallacy. This counting calories thing has been, dogma for so long, that people believe it, but it's just not true. Can you speak that a little bit and just, tell us why that doesn't work?
I could speak about it forever, and I love my job because however we speak about this could could crack something open for someone. They could see something new that they hadn't before, and their life is different, and that means everything. And so what I see has happened is that the manufacturing companies were really providing people a service, quick food that's shelf stable and cheap. Okay, that sounds appealing to everyone,
Right.
except the food is designed to keep us addicted. We can't stop. Everybody says it's kind of a joke. I open a bag of whatever and suddenly the whole thing's gone. Well, there's a reason for that. There's a beautiful design. Each food is perfectly crafted to keep us needing and wanting more. It's got the mouthfeel and the crunch and the gooiness and the sweetness and the saltiness, and it's designed to keep us addicted.
Right. The
And
MSG,
then,
all of
right,
it.
then because we can't control ourselves around it, then the diet industry swoops in and says, something's wrong with you. You have no self-control. It's like, wait, okay, so everybody, come on, be real. If you think about broccoli and steak and apples and oranges and greens and eggs and sweet potatoes, nobody would say, boy, bake up a sweet potato and I'm out of control. I can't stop. Okay. So when we're talking about real food, real whole food, we do tend to have some constraint because our satiety and hunger hormones work when we're eating real food. The minute we open a bag or a bottle or a box of ultra processed food, which is basically everything at the grocery store. I always joke and say they don't sell food at the grocery store. People are like, what do you mean? That's all they sell. No, not much. So even,
They sell food-like products.
That's right. Even look at the coffee creamers and the substitute milks, look at all those ingredients. Okay. So then understandably, people are like, throw up their hands and they're like, well, it seems so complicated. What am I supposed to eat? And I encourage people to we're gradually increasing the fasting hours and we're gradually shrinking the eating window. I also want people to, again, be mindful of having a meal and pause and a meal and pause. And step 3 would be gradually add in real food. Now, people call that, I'm trying to eat healthy. Well, no, that you're actually just trying to eat more actual real food with actual real nutrients in it and fiber in it that actually is delicious once you get used to it. Again, right? All that hyper palatable ultra processed food has been designed. It's numbed our tongue. So we need more exciting flavors. Okay. So to circle back to your question about diet culture, really the prison that we're in, and we've been deceived to think that something's wrong with us. The food is causing addiction. The food is causing the craving. The food is causing this insatiable desire for more, which is never satisfying. And it's not your fault. And calorie counting and having lots of little unsatisfying meals from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to bed. Imagine if you took all those little diet meals and you squished them into one eating window, all the same amount of food. Intermittent fasting isn't about calorie restricting. There have been plenty of studies that show that if you eat your food in an eating window, the same amount, you're much more satisfied because when you're in the fasting hours, the body's so happily chugging along. You've got great energy. You're not fixating on food. You're not ravenously hungry. You're burning your own body fat. And then you eat your food in your eating window to your satisfaction. Your body it's capable of starting to tell you when it's had enough. And right now, because of the constant eating from the minute we wake up, even some people are like, well, I don't eat till lunch. It's like, yeah, but what's in your coffee and what are you actually putting in your mouth from the minute you wake up until you think you're starting by eating lunch? Everything that you're currently having, unless it's plain unflavored water or plain unflavored black coffee or plain unflavored black or green tea, are there nutrients and food flavors. And we can quiet it all down, including this diet noise and the blaming of the individual.
Yeah. So what the industry ends up doing, the diet industry ends up doing is shaming people.
Yes.
Right. And then you start beating yourself up saying, yeah, I'm just a slob. I don't have any discipline. And none of that is true. You touched on so many great points there, Laurie. I just want to just go over a couple of them here. And one is, this is what I say, eat food in its God-given natural form as close as possible.
Yeah.
Right. If something comes in a box or a package or through a window, it's suspect. Right.
Yes.
So yes, we want to read ingredients, but we want it to the furthest extent possible. Buy single ingredient foods. That's you don't have to worry about pulling out your smartphone and Googling this ingredient because you're buying broccoli or you're buying beef or chicken. without any additives. That's a great place to start. And another thing that you mentioned that I just want to just reiterate, and that is we're not talking about restricting calories here with an intermittent fast. We're talking about just squeezing the time frame that you're eating the same amount of calories. So
Right.
counting calories has some value, and I almost hesitate to say that because, if you starve yourself enough, you will lose weight. But the problem is you cannot maintain that. If you're walking around hungry 24/7, you can do it for a little while, but eventually hunger is going to win the day.
Well, I want to provide a little clarity about something you just said because someone could be confused in there. And I totally agree with you. You said if you're walking around hungry, people are like, well, isn't that what Laurie's telling us to do? I'm like, no. Okay.
No.
So when you get that engine, that eating engine going, so when you wake up in the morning, you take in any flavors or nutrients, that digestion engine has begun. You've raised insulin, okay, which is a hormone. Now, if you are taking in tiny little diet meals throughout the day, you're keeping your insulin up, you're never tapping into your own body fat stores, and you're never eating to satiety.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's what
you're
I'm talking about when I say
always
walking around
feeling
hungry.
hungry. Exactly.
Yes.
But when you fast clean and tap into your own body fat, and your body's feeling really well while you're fasting, you're not walking around hungry. You are looking forward to your eating window later. And that's going to be delicious. So it's kind of the best of everything. You're feeling great when you're fasting. I'm really happy that you brought up about calories and not calorie restricting and not even paying attention to calories. Again, remember, our ancestors ate food. They didn't have to. It's only the food industry feeding us food that makes us addicted. And then the diet industry saying you need to count everything and restrict everything. You can see the cycle here, right? It's a trap. It's a prison.
Right.
And then making us feel like we're the problem. Okay.
Right.
So once it's so important this first month and then that second month, you've figured out what fasting hours feel good to you. What eating window timing feels good to you. Eat normally. This isn't at the beginning of establishing an intermittent fasting regimen. It's not the time to also start dieting and eating healthy, okay? Eat normally. So you look forward to your eating window. It's very simple for you. You eat what's in your fridge. You eat what you like. You eat, what your family likes. As time passes, the first month, the second month, you're settling into your eating window. You're settling into your fasting hours. Your body will start telling you what it wants. And it will start losing interest in the ultra-processed food for the most part. Okay? So again, there's nothing wrong with you out there, that there are foods that you can't imagine your life without. And in the beginning of your fasting regimen, you don't have to go without them. Your body's the boss. This is where the reverence, the noticing, the tuning in, things get quiet, and you begin to develop a beautiful appreciation for how the body works.
Yeah, the body is super, super smart, and that and I'm trained as a naturopath, and if you want to embrace naturopathy, we want to come alongside the body's natural design and encourage our natural processes because God gave us a built-in intelligence to our bodies, and our default setting is health. I'm a geek, so I did the math on this. It's estimated that the human body has about 75 trillion cells. And that's a massive number. And to put that in perspective, if you started counting seconds, how long do you think it would take to count 75 trillion seconds?
No clue. I have no idea. How long?
A lot of people, if people would take a guess and say 100 years, it's actually 3.2 million years.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, that's a lot of cells that are communicating with one another,
yes,
and being, as you said, being tuned up with autophagy and being eliminated at times with apoptosis and being replaced. And the body is so incredibly complex. I don't even like this term biohacking because we can't outsmart God.
I agree with you. I don't like that term either. Let's just work with our bodies.
Let's just work with
We're
our bodies.
We're not outsmarting. Yeah.
Let's work with the way we're designed.
Yes.
And, one of the things, circling back to the diet industry again, diets don't work. Eating less and exercising more doesn't work because we have a metabolic set point.
Yes.
And we've been told from the medical industry and the diet industry and the food industry that there's a set point that's determined by our genetics. And that is your metabolic set point is that point at which you've eaten enough. That's all you need. And if you eat any more than that, it's going to get stored as fat. That's what we've been told. But the problem is it's not cast in stone, that set point, and it's not determined by our genetics alone. Our bodies will adapt to what we're going through. Our bodies are smart. They'll adapt to our environment. So if we calorie restrict for a period of time, the body is going to lower that set point. It says, hey, we're starving. We're going to have to, your body wants to do what it needs to do to keep you alive. And your body will move that metabolic set point. And now you've got a lower metabolic rate. And now when you go back to eating your regular food, guess what happens? You get fat easier. So that's why diets don't work. And that's why counting calories is a waste of time. You want to, as Laurie said, eat until you're satiated. Eat until you're satisfied. Not till you're stuffed. Just eat until you're there. You say, yeah, I've had enough. And your body will tell you, as you go through this, you're going to start tuning into your body more, and your body's going to talk to you. Hey, our bodies are always talking to us, right? They tell us when we're hot, when we're cold, when we're sweaty, when we're tired. But there's other ways the body talks to us as well. How's your mental clarity? How's your energy? How's your mood? Are you jittery? Are you edgy? These are all clues as to what's going on inside of us. And when we start tuning into that intelligence and listening to that, wow, great things happen. So anyway, a little bit of a rant there. But go ahead.
I love it. And fasting, believe it or not, is the thing that allows for the quiet, the clarity. It's, throughout all human history, and it's, as you know, part of all or most religious and spiritual and meditation traditions.
That's right.
To go quiet yourself, commune.
Yep.
And in that quiet of fasting, we are tuned in.
That's right.
And so that's where I circle back to this deliberate reverence for the body, but fasting actually enhances that ability to have respect and quiet and get communications that we otherwise wouldn't have
absolutely
been able to hear.
Jesus said, when you fast. He didn't say if you fast. It was just a given that you were going to fast. You can fast for physical reasons, which is what we're talking about here today, but you can also fast for spiritual reasons. If you're looking for a spiritual breakthrough, or you need an answer to prayer, or you would just like to hear from God, fasting is a really, really good way to clear out the static in that communication line. And I've used that in the past, and it is just incredible. It's hard until you experience it yourself. It's hard to put it into words. A couple things. There's so much to talk about here, but. We're using the term intermittent fasting quite a bit, but I'm not crazy about that term either, because all fasting is intermittent. Right. So it can get a little confusing. So I prefer short-term and long-term fast, or daily fast and longer-term fast. My daily fast, if I have my way, is about an 18-hour window, and then I'll eat in that 6-hour window. And, if you're starting out at a 12, you might want to go, start out at 12 and 12, and then go to 14 and 10. Or maybe go to 15 and 9, and work your way up to a longer period of time when you're fasting. And by the way, you will not be hungry if you do this right. Right. You won't. Your body is gonna talk to you, and it's gonna say, hey, I'm gonna give you more GABA. I'm gonna give you more serotonin. And you're gonna feel a calm and a sense of peace. And you're also gonna feel good that you're doing something good for yourself. Right? It's all good.
We do want this to be easier for people, and that's why one of the reasons that I talk about the clean fast, people think, oh, it's just going to be so much easier if I just put a little lemon in, or can't I have a little bit of this or that? And you can find anything on the internet that will give you permission to have, 10 calories while I'm fasting. But here's the body, as you said, is so smart. And the minute it tastes any sweetness or food flavors, like lemon, food flavor, the body starts its digestive process.
Right.
The hormones align, the body gets ready to receive food.
Yep.
Because it got a little taste.
That's
and
right.
You think you're fasting, so you're not eating, and the body's like, where's the food you just promised me was coming? You gave me a taste of lemon. Where's the food? And
Right.
then it gets grumpy and fasting becomes hard.
Right.
So when someone goes through this first week and it's gradual and you're working up to 16 hours and you can have your eating window from, 10 to 6 or 1 to 9, I don't care, that you're settling then into an 8-hour eating window. Within 2 weeks or even 3 weeks, if someone says they're really struggling to get to 16, I suspect they're not fasting clean because having plain water, 1 cup of plain black coffee, plain green or black tea, of course, your medications as prescribed.
Right.
If someone's taking in any flavors or nutrients, it does make fasting harder. So we want the best of all the healing and the repair and the fat burning and the balancing of hormones. So fast clean. And we want fasting to be easier. So fast clean. And then it's like, oh, there's so many things that aren't allowed. What's allowed while I'm fasting? Fast clean and eat all those, have the flavor party later in your eating window. So again,
Yeah.
remind yourself, it's the best of everything. I'm fasting clean now. I'm eating all the yummy things I love later. And then your body's the boss. Some
That's
people will be
excellent.
like, I can't eat this or that anymore. It's like, well, your body never wanted you to have that anyway. So
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You mentioned this earlier, but I want to circle back to that as well. And the body has two sources of fuel. It has glucose, which is blood sugar, or fat. And when we're eating constantly, our body is using sugar. It's using glucose for energy. And glucose is good. It's useful. We need it. But it's a little bit like throwing a newspaper on a fire. You're going to get a flash of energy, and then it burns out and it's gone quickly. Whereas when you fast for a while and you go in, your body shifts into the fat burning mode, you're producing ketones, which are a great brain fuel, and it gives you that sense of peace and calm and focus and concentration and all that. That's a very good. It's like throwing a log on the fire. It's a sustainable energy that is really, really good, and that's what you'll get to if you do the intermittent fasting as Laurie's talking about, and then extend your fasting window. You'll be burning fat for energy and producing ketones. Now, there's a lot of talk today about a ketogenic diet, and I would suggest, and there's a lot of science to back me up on this, and that is, either we don't want to go to extremes either way. You don't want to stay in a ketogenic state. Your body doesn't like that either. It's almost as
Correct.
bad as staying in a sugar-dominated state where you're overloading your body with sugar. Therefore, insulin is up all the time, cortisol is up, and that's not good either. So we want to get to the point where we're cycling back and forth, and our body becomes efficient at shifting between glucose burning and fat burning. That's our design.
yes, exactly. And that fat burning state really feels good.
It does. It really does, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Laurie, there's another question I have for you, and that is, does intermittent fasting mess with your hormones, especially as a woman going into menopause?
Well, that's, throughout human history, also, people have said, oh, things are dangerous for women. Oh, boy, we got to be careful. Okay, look, there was no food for all humans throughout all human history. Okay, food was scarce. So human beings, all humans, including women, have thrived in a fasting state, in a fasted state. So here we are in a society where we have an abundance of food 24/7. And that has not served us well. Everybody can look around. Having food around all the time has not served us well. Ultra processed food all the time. And so when we talk about hormones for women, we all have over 80 hormones. Insulin is a hormone, cortisol, our thyroid hormones. I mean, it's just, the list is long. For a woman who is cycling still, so any woman under 50, you're still having your cycle. You want to be mindful of that cycle, and that oftentimes, for some, if not most women, those days before your cycle comes, you may need to have a longer eating window. And be mindful of that we're oftentimes craving a lot of food that isn't so good for us. And if during those craving days, and when we have a longer eating window, if we can train ourselves to eat food that is really good fuel with wonderful nutrients that fuels us well. That's the next step. But again,
and a woman needs more carbohydrate during that time as well.
That's right. That's why women are craving sugar and chocolate before their period comes.
Yeah.
But this is another trap of the diet industry, which is if a woman is enjoying intermittent fasting and feeling really well, and maybe she's losing some fat and she's got great energy, and then she's instructed, okay, show yourself some respect and have a longer eating window on those days before your period comes.
Yes.
Diet culture would then have us think, oh no, aren't I ruining everything? No, this isn't about ruining anything. This is about working with your body. And
yes.
The way I coach people
Amen.
when they're talking about, bad for women's hormones, use me as an example. Immediately, hunger hormones, satiety hormones, all estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, like all of these hormones get balanced. They're a network, a hierarchy, if you will, of little chemical communicators. They all have their own job. And when we're fasting and quieting things down, they actually can do their jobs better. Now, one thing that people are concerned about with women and fasting especially is we have been trained in diet culture to push really hard. We're extremists now. The pendulum swings this way and we try really hard and we pull at all the stops and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and then we can't take it anymore and the pendulum swings the other way. We start and quit and start and quit. I'm not telling anyone to push hard and struggle and suffer. I'm not telling anyone to fast so hard that you're raising cortisol and, having chronic stress and living in an environment of upset and struggle and stress. No, we're talking about quiet everything down, tuning into your body, starting gradually, discovering the fasting hours and the eating window that feels really good to you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there are moments when it takes a little determination to get through a hunger wave, but we're not talking about the fasting Olympics and putting a lot of pressure on yourself.
Right.
So when it comes to all people's hormones, you can trust that when you are starting gradually, you're being good to yourself, you're having a nice eating window, you're eating meals, you're closing your eating window, you're drinking plain water, you're tuning into your body, you're sleeping better, your digestion is better, your stress feels better, you become, believe it or not, a more patient-focused person.
Right.
That's good for our hormones.
Absolutely. It's good for your relationships as well.
It sure is.
And relationships are good for health, by the way. So it's nice. It's a nice merry-go-round there, isn't it?
Yeah.
I want to mention a couple of resources. If you're interested in, especially female hormones, and how to eat around your cycle, the book Fast Like a Girl by Mindy Pelz is an excellent read. I'm currently reading that book right now, about halfway through, and she's really got a lot to say in that area. It's a very, very good book. Also, if you want to go deeper, episode 48 on this podcast, I interviewed Dr. David Jockers of the Functional Nutrition Podcast, and he wrote a book called The Fasting Transformation. And he's a real smart guy, and he got pretty technical, but it's a good episode if you want to go deeper on this subject. And one other resource I wanted to mention: when you first start out, it might take a period of time before your body starts producing ketones and burning fuel for energy and producing ketones. Yeah. One of the things you can do to help ease the transition is to take some exogenous ketones, that is, orally, actually in the form of a pill. And Dr. Josh Axe of the Ancient Health Podcast, he has a new supplement company called Ancient Nutrition, and he calls it Keto Fire. And it's a form of exogenous ketones with some caffeine that will help push you into that ketogenic state and will just accelerate or ease the process into that fat burning state. So that's a resource that you might want to use if you're having trouble extending that fasting window. So Laurie, as we wrap things up, what is the low-hanging fruit or the most important thing that you would like to leave with people? This is so simple. If you start feeling like, oh my gosh, it's so complicated and there's all these schedules, I don't know which one to pick, and what am I really supposed to eat, and am I supposed to take a supplement? It's like, whew, okay, breathe. Remember, there's two parts to every day: your clean fasting hours and your eating window, and you get to say when they are.
So step one, just decide, when's my eating window today? David, I have this fantasy for human beings that we would just naturally ask each other, when's your eating window? Out of curiosity or kindness, or, oh, I'd like to have a meal with you. When do you normally eat? And you would say 11 to 5. I'd be like, great, let's have lunch.
Wouldn't that be great?
Right? Like, when's your eating window today? And you could say, well, I normally have an 8-hour eating window, but I've kind of been enjoying alternating. Some days I have a 3-hour eating window, and some days I have an 8-hour eating window. So I have this desire that people keep it very, very simple. You settle in and discover for yourself the eating window that feels really well to you. And that when things get complicated and confusing and you don't know if you should have this supplement, or you don't know if you're allowed to have these foods or not, that you be peaceful. You decide on your eating window today, and you keep tuning in when you have questions about how am I doing, and am I doing it right, and is it working? You tune in to your own body and check in how you're feeling. And you can ask it, should I eat this or this? And your body will tell you. Your body is the boss. And this beautiful, quiet reverence that we can have in a simple fasting clean and eating window will lay the foundation for clarity and joy in all these other areas.
Absolutely. That's really good. One thing I'd like to add to that, and that is fasting gives the body an opportunity to heal. And the body can do all kinds of house cleaning and corrections when you're in a fasted state. I did an interview with Chris Gibson. It's episode number 102. And he wrote a book called Acne Free in 3 days. And that's what he did. He fasted, and his acne that plagued him for years. And he'd been down the medical route. He'd done everything the doctors told him to do. It wouldn't go away. He fasted for 3 days, and his acne cleared up and never came back.
Yes.
So there's a correction that could be made.
Yes.
And it happens rapidly as well. Your body knows what to do. You just need to give it a chance.
Everything from psoriasis to plantar fasciitis. I had a pretty big cyst on my spine that went away. My plantar fasciitis went away. Aches and pains and arthritis and autoimmune and type 2 diabetes. I mean, this is a healing regimen.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things fasting does is it lowers inflammation, systemic whole body inflammation. And inflammation is, and the research is pointing this out, is bringing this out these days, and that is inflammation is the root cause to almost any health challenge. And if you can calm the systemic inflammation, you're going to go a long way towards healing just about anything.
And feeling amazing. There's a big kick right now. Everybody wants to talk about biohacking and longevity. And, I'm like, okay, you people enjoy all of that. I certainly want to live as long as possible. But I have discovered that what people really want is to feel better today. So let's get everybody feeling better today and within 3 days and that first month of settling into a fasting regimen. And I just imagine all your listeners out there feeling better and better and better, which makes me very happy.
Very good. Thank you, Laurie. So if someone is resonating with this message and they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
My business is Fast Forward. So it's fastforwardwellness.com. And people, if they're like, wow, I just want to remember everything she said, you can download a checklist of how to start. And I love it when you start on your own, or you have a conversation with me to get some extra coaching. I'm happy to do a complimentary short coaching call, which is not a sales call. I really offer a free coaching session if someone's like, oh, I like her, I have some questions. And you can write to me and we can set that up. And I love hearing how people are doing, and I love discovering if there are ways that I could support you long term.
Excellent. Very good. Laurie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with the Natural Nation today.
Thank you.
For more, go to the show notes page at davidsandstrom.com/119. There you can find an audio as well as a video version of the podcast. Always put links to all the resources that we mentioned, as well as some type of a content upgrade to help you go deeper with that subject. If you're enjoying the show, sure would appreciate you telling a like-minded friend about it. The number one way someone hears about a podcast is that a friend tells them. So if you have a like-minded friend that's a follower of Jesus Christ and wants to hear about health from a Christian biblical perspective, I'll bet they'll be grateful for you telling them about the show. Thanks again for listening. I appreciate you. I'll talk with you next time. Be blessed.